There is a reason for this mystery, and I think the reason is hidden in the answer to the question, why did Miyazaki make the Castle of Cagliostro in the first place? The clue to that answer can be found from the year after the release of the Castle of Cagliostro. There was an interview in October 1980, exactly a year after the release, in a magazine called Animeju. He said, all that's left for Lupin to do after being left alone in the real world is to steal a young girl's heart. That's it. It sounds a bit negative, doesn't it? When Miyazaki said, steal young girl's heart, he was referring to the famous climax scene where Inspector Zenigata says, he stole something of no small value, your heart. And this is supposed to be a great line that moves everyone's heart. But what Miyazaki really meant was that Lupin was an unworthy man who was only able to steal a girl's heart. And that's because he was left alone in the real world. Someone just commented, Miyazaki sounds mentally ill. Yes, he is, or more precisely. Whoever is moved by Zenigata's famous line must sympathize with Miyazaki's despair. Because it's hard to tell why he made this movie. So the question is to see how Miyazaki made the Castle of Cagliostro. To do that, I made a Miyazaki timeline Cagliostro version. Yeah, the timeline of Miyazaki is getting longer and longer every time I make one for the broadcast. He was born in 1941, and after graduating from college, he entered toy animation. Well, I don't know if he was a full-time worker, but he was an official staff member. Then he spent 3 years from 1965 to 68 on The Great Adventure of Horace with Isao Takahata. And in 1971, he left toy animation with him and went to A Production to make Pee-Pee Longstocking. But the project didn't start, so he joined the TV series Lupin III. Then, between 1972 to 73, he made the 2 feature films of Panda Go Panda. Then he moved to Zuyo and started preparing for Heidi, Girl of the Alps. Then, in 1974, Heidi was broadcasted. This was his first commercial success. Then he made 3,000 Leagues in Search of Mother. He gradually became a known figure among the anime industry as he grew his reputation. 1977, a pre-production of Future Boy Conan, his first director debut on TV, which was broadcasted the next year. After that, he moved to telecom to make Little Nemo, Adventures in Slumberland, with American creators. Miyazaki and Takahata were the Japanese directors candidates, so they went back and forth between Japan and the US. Meanwhile, in December 1979, the Castle of Cagliostro was released. Then at last, he got fed up with Nemo in 1982 and left telecom. This is the timeline of Miyazaki in regards to the Castle of Cagliostro, and the outline of what I'll talk about today. Now, the final goal is to answer the question of why Lupin threw away the fake bills. Someone just wrote, I heard Nemo didn't complete. That's not true, it did complete, but not in the most successful way. I'll talk about this tragedy later. Well, later would be about 10 minutes from now. First of all, we need to know about the TV series Lupin III, which Miyazaki joined halfway through the production, before we understand what kind of anime the Castle of Cagliostro was. And to understand the TV series, we have to understand the original manga version written by Monkey Punch. Now, I want to know how many of you have read this. You have, really? When it came out in a manga magazine, I took glimpses of it at restaurants or the dentist that I used to go to. Oh, many of you have. Nice. Good job, guys. This is how the pictures look. Like this. They're drawn in detail. Back then, the style of comics with a realistic narrative was yet to establish, so the amount of information on each page was enormous. And Inspector Zenigata is looking for Lupin here, but Lupin is actually hiding right here. Hold on. Can you see? This is Lupin. He's disguised and in the crowd. Yeah, this guy in glasses. This is the first chapter where Lupin comes out in the manga. Stylish pictures, huh? And of course they are stylish. It's because Monkey Punch was deeply influenced by a comic artist called Mort Drucker, who was a regular contributor to a subculture magazine called Mad in the US. So this is an illustration by Drucker. Do you see the resemblance? For example, he drew a woman's thighs thick and waist narrow. Also, if you pay attention to people's palms and legs, you'd know. They are so large, as if these people have acromegaly. So these are some of the characteristics of Mort Drucker's illustration. Monkey Punch was someone who took these characteristics and implemented them into the style of Japanese comic strips. Lupin III was in a magazine called Manga Action from 1967 to 69 and became his most important work. Now, his pen name, Monkey Punch, was named by the chief editor of the magazine, who also came up with the name of Ken Tsukikage. The chief editor was a strange man, like the producer of The God of Entertainment. He named manga artists as he pleased, and he didn't even discuss them. Monkey Punch didn't like the name Monkey Punch, but he thought, oh well, it's just a temporary name until this series is over. So he accepted the name, but since Lupin III became his biggest hit, he had to keep using the same name until today. Anyway, soon after the manga became popular, its anime version was planned. You can read the background stories of this project in a book written by an animator called Yasuo Otsuka titled The Ambition of Little Nemo. This book is amazing, so you should all buy it and read. Now, I'll refer to one episode. Back then, Fuji TV broadcasted one of the first full-scale black and white anime series, Astro Boy, which was a hit. Their panicked rival broadcaster TBS decided to make their own anime as well, but there was no one to commission it to. Toei Animation stayed away from TV animes. Mushi Production was busy with Astro Boy, so they commissioned a friend of a TBS employee called Yutaka Fujioka, who was running a puppet theater at the time. Then, Fujioka made a company called Tokyo Movie that later made the TV version of Lupin III. But the request from TBS was to make an anime ASAP, so the first TV anime called Big X was on air even before the company was established. Big X was a hit, so Tokyo Movie produced the first series of Little Ghost Q-Taro. But even then, they were short of animators, so they would try to poach from Toei or Mushi Production by negotiating at their company's entrances. We'll pay you this much, what do you think? And they actually paid at the site. Pretty disgusting. But Fujioka wasn't the only disgusting one, so were the animators. When they made Little Ghost Q-Taro, they cheated on the numbers of their drawings. When one sheet was enough to draw Q-Taro, they drew the body on one sheet, a hand on another, eyes on the third, and a mouth on the fourth. And they claimed 6 sheets as their workload. They ripped off amateur staff members who accepted them easily. As a result, those animators made good money. Later, Otsuka confessed that it was tough to find those cheating animators and fire them. It's a famous story. Some people say that animators have always been mistreated, but that's not true at all. They were making a sucker of those who didn't have knowledge about animation. People were living strongly back then.